Hi there, and welcome to today's episode of How the Game Was Won. Today we're looking at the tournament of the FIDE Grand Prix being held in Tashkent in Uzbekistan. This game was from round 9 of that tournament and played on the 31st of October 2014 with Jakovenko with the white pieces and Mamedyarov with the black pieces. So without further ado, let's look at how the opening sequence panned out in this game. White started off with knight f3, to which black answered with f5, which is not a normally recommended move order, but perhaps Mamedyarov had some sort of a surprise novelty ready to uncork in this type of a setup. White decided to go for a English opening type of setup with c4. However, he also had the opportunity to maybe play something like d3 and follow that up with e4 to set himself up with a particularly annoying strong pawn center for black to be able to deal with. But as it turned out, he decided to go for the English opening, to which black answered with knight f3, and then you had g3, g6 for some fianchettoing, b4, d6, d4, starting to look very English opening like at the moment. Bishop g7, bishop b2, e5, d takes e, and instead of recapturing straight away, black played knight f to d7, bishop g2, so both sides have fianchettoed their kingside bishops. Now black recaptures with d takes e5, but before we do the recapture d takes e5, let's just have a look, see that in this type of position the more common move for black to play is the move of knight to c6, but invariably black scores horribly with this type of continuation, and it's very seldom seen these days in top level professional chess. So black played d takes e5, and in this situation you can now see that there's still no uneven pawn structure, which is generally what white would be tending to try and do, pushing out of the opening and into the middle game, is to try and create a pawn imbalance whereby white would have a pawn majority on either the king side or the queen side wing, and then use the middle game to try and exploit that pawn imbalance so that he can develop a passed pawn on the side of the board that he has the pawn majority. But as you can see, coming out of the first half of the opening, white hasn't managed to achieve that goal as yet. The game continued with castles, queen e7, e4, black castles as well. White plays b5, and overall you can say that Jakovenko can be happy with his opening position. He's got a good amount of space on the queen side, and he's also got pressure against that potentially weak e5 pawn. And Mamedyarov has yet to develop any sort of counterattack, and what's more, Mamedyarov also has two pieces still sitting on their initial squares. The game continued with knight c5, knight c3, bishop e6, So now white has got all his pieces, minor pieces developed already, and black still has one piece still to develop. White continues with knight d5, dropping the knight down onto a beautiful outpost. Obviously a move like c6, for example, will be able to dislodge the knight from its outpost square, but even so, black would have, for instance, the square of b4 at his disposal for the knight to go through, which is still a reasonably good and strong outpost covering several key squares. The game continued with queen d6, knight g5, good outpost for the other knight. However, this knight outpost is somewhat more tenuous because it's not being backed up by strong central pawns as what the e4 knight is backed up by the e4 and c4 pawns. Black continues with knight on b to d7, at long last developing his last minor piece, and white comes into a3 to be able to effectively hit at the queen that's sitting on d6. An interesting other possibility in this position would be to have your tactical trade-off already happening here on move 15 by playing knight takes e6. You got knight takes, e takes, g takes, knight e3, f4, queen takes d6, c takes d6, bishop d5, and what white would have effectively achieved here would be, what he would be looking for would be the 3 versus 2, or should I rather make those red, 3 versus 2 majority on the queen side, and that will be able to help white to have something concrete to build towards as far as the plan is concerned, with developing one of those into a passed pawn. But as it was, the game continued with bishop to a3, as I mentioned, hitting out at the d6 queen. The game continues with bishop f7, queen c2, c6, knight b4, a5, rook a to d1, queen f6, knight d3, queen g5. Now we start doing a bit of a tactical melee and reducing the number of minor pieces on the board, and after the exchange of, white will still be able to maintain some sort of degree of advantage. But let's just run through the exchange quickly. White plays knight takes c5, knight takes c5, bishop takes c5, a good strong square for the bishop. Rook f to d8, bishop to b6, rook dc8, which then effectively wins the d file for white. And now white can continue with e takes f, queen takes f, and bishop e4. Again, obviously, double piece hitting out at the black queen. And as you can see from here, the white still has some degree of advantage. The black has got this weak pawn on e4, which can be so e5, it can be a useful target, and once that falls, it will be a 3 versus 2 pawn structure on the king side, which will give white something to build towards as far as developing the passed pawn on the king side is concerned. But the one thing that white does need to be very careful about is the potential of black opening up the c file, because he already has a rook developed onto the c file that is potentially attacking the white queen in c2, so white needs to be extra careful that black doesn't open up the c file. Another potential weakness for black as well is this backward pawn sitting on b7, because after having pushed the c pawn and the a pawn, he's left with this backward pawn, and backward pawns are generally weak and a good place for the opposition to be able to focus their attack. In this position, the game actually continued with queen e6, b takes, which now leaves black with 3 isolated and weak pawns, which can be a useful target for black, so for white. And in this position, a good move for white would, for instance, have been to play rook c1, but instead white played c5, which allowed black to come in and snap up the a pawn and exchange of queens, to which white responded with rook d6 and bishop c4. And it's perhaps at the moment in time pressure that white was in a good amount of time trouble here, so it's probably as a result of this time pressure that Jakovenko played his next game, which totally overlooked the incredibly strong reply that white had at his disposal. And here Jakovenko played rook to b1, and as a result his entire position just falls apart incredibly rapidly. And because what black could have played here, for example, would have been rook a1, bishop b5, rook takes, bishop takes a5, bishop f8, and although black stands stronger here, it's certainly much less strong than the position that appeared on the board. So white played rook b1, totally overlooking the very powerful move of a4. Possibly what white was thinking, that black's response would be the dubious move of bishop to b5, which would then allow white to come back with rook takes, c takes, bishop takes a8, rook takes a8, c6, which is in fact completely winning for white over here. But after white plays the immensely powerful a4, the tables have been completely turned, and the game is now turning into a one game for black, with white continuing with rook takes c6, a3, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, c6, a2, and now this a pawn on the a2 square is immensely powerful for black, and all that black effectively now needs to do is maneuver carefully so that if black can get his bishop up onto the d4 square in order to be able to cover a1, then the game will be completely won for black. And this is how Mamedyarov managed to achieve exactly this. White obviously here played rook a1. The first of the bishop moves is bishop to f8. White plays c7. The bishop goes to d6, inching ever closer to that elusive d4 square. And because the white rook is effectively stuck here on a1, it's not able to offer any protection for the c7 pawn, which means that effectively black over here is playing with an additional piece, which is a really good, albeit temporary, advantage for black to be able to use, and Mamedyarov uses it brilliantly to his advantage. So here white played bishop b7, and black answers with bishop takes c7, sacrificing the exchange. Rook takes, bishop takes, and in this position Jakovenko actually resigned, because there's absolutely nothing that white can do that will prevent the bishop from landing on the d4 square on the very next move, which will then in turn be hitting the rook that's sitting on a1, and following that the pawn will be able to queen, and then at the very least white will have to give up his rook on a1 to exchange of the queen, and then black will be able to utilize his powerful bishop pair on all these brilliant open diagonals to mop up the balance of white's kingside pawns and bring home the full point. So in this position, with a totally hopeless situation of not being able to prevent the a pawn from queening and losing his rook in the process, Jakovenko resigned the game, and Mamedyarov, by picking up the full point, moved to 1/2 point away from the tournament lead with only 2 rounds to go. This is the second and last of the decisive games from round 9 that I'm looking at. Round 10, all of the games were drawn, so I'll be returning with looking at the decisive games from round 11, the last and final round of the tournament, and I hope to see you there as well. Please click the thumbs up like button below this video, share this out amongst your chess friends, and while you're about it, post any comments and questions that you have down below as well, and click that big red subscribe button, that way you can stay subscribed to my channel for more videos as I post them on a week-to-week basis, which will be including the World Championship match games between Carlsen and Anand that will be starting on this coming Saturday, the 8th of November. That's how the game was won.